and welcome to my second office hours. My name is Jeff Rolka, and I want to thank you for joining us. I am going to start off today. I know that last time I did a warm-up, and then we did like a lick of the week. I'm going to jump into the lick of the week right now. And what that's going to do is just kind of expedite things. And what I was thinking about for our lick of the week, FYI, please feel free to jump in with comments in the comments section, or actually no, the chat. You can interact with me via chat. So if you've got questions about singing or singing instruction or something like that, hit me up in the chat window and I will take your questions just as quickly as I can as they come in. So a lot of the people that are on the channel sing in choirs. And there's a very, very common choir warm-up exercise. I've done them in choirs, and I have to assume that many of you have done them now too. They go like this. This is the pattern. And then oftentimes, we'll also diminish. Or I should say descend. And what you'll find is that a lot of people do E's or A's. And what I would like to suggest you try with this is whether your choir director will let you do this, or whether you just kind of have to think it in your head, or maybe you do this in your own home practice, is put the solfege syllables in there. This is a major scale, and we're just going up and down the major scale, touching on each of the individual notes. So you can just as easily sing or think do, re, do, mi, do, fa, do, so, do, la, do, ti, do, 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 ti, do, la, do, so, do, fa, do, mi, do, re, do, do. And practicing with the solfege syllables is just such a great way to begin to put together the underpinnings of music, to begin to understand how all of the notes of the major scale relate to one another, and to get those solfege notes into your practice so you can start hearing and understanding melodies in a very intimate way that you can understand on the fly. So what I thought we'd do here is we'd go through this together. Altos and tenors and baritones, most people will be able to hang in down here. Sopranos, mezzos, you'll probably want to start here. We'll go up and we'll go back down. So let's try that. Do, re, do, mi, do, fa, do, so, do, la, do, ti, do, do. And then we'll descend. Do, ti, do, la, do, so, do, fa, do, mi, do, re, do, do. And that is the lick of the week. It's a 1-octave scale, and we're alternating between the tonic and each of the individual scale degrees ascending, and then flipping it around, and then descending. So, still waiting for questions to come on in. Please hit me up in the chat window. That is what we are here for today. Part of the reason why I'm foregoing the warm-up this week is because I felt like there were a lot of questions coming in, and I didn't necessarily allocate enough time to answer them all, and I really, really want to get your questions. So, send something through the chat window. In the meantime, what I'll do is I'll do that scale again just so we can get a little practice. And let's even go up a half step here. So we can start here. Do, re, do, mi, do, fa, do, so, do, la, do, ti, do, do. Do, ti, do, la, do, so, do, fa, do, mi, do, re, do, do. I might add as well, you can breathe anywhere in there. You don't have to try to do it on one breath or anything like that. Take your breaths wherever you want. And as you get accustomed to that, the idea is that with the solfege, you're going to get more and more accurate when you're not singing the solfege, and you'll also recognize scale degrees and scale patterns when you're singing the songs that you're singing, making it, again, more easier, I should say, to sing in tune, and just overall being more accurate with your melodies, making sure that everything is really, really nice and aligned. So, still waiting for the first question to come in. Don't be shy. There's nothing to be shy about. I suppose I could. There was one person who posted a question in the comments section this week about power. And power is tricky. I don't think you will find any video of the couple hundred that I have on YouTube that really talks about just developing power. And the reason why is this. If we focus on power, I believe that we are losing track of the fundamentals that create power in the singing voice. There was an article in Scientific American, now it's been a long time ago, several years ago. Thank you for breaking the ice, Heidi. That is very, very cool. And I will get to that in just one second. So power, the article in Scientific American talked about the voice as a non-linear mechanism. And what that means is that if the more pressure we apply to it doesn't equal more response. So if we try to push only more air, we won't necessarily get louder or more powerful. We have to rely on the resonant qualities of the voice, the other occurrences that happen harmonically in the oral cavity, so that, that whole open space of the open mouth. Those soft tissues and vibration patterns that happen in response to good airflow and good vowel focus. So when it comes to power, if you want to sing with power, focus on your vowels, focus on release, and especially focus on airflow and engagement so that the soft tissues in the oral cavity can remain released and relaxed, that they are free to vibrate sympathetically and in response to the vibrations that the vocal folds are creating. That is going to recycle on itself and create a feedback loop that gives you more and more and more power. This is how opera singers create those big, big sounds with their voices. The only other thing you can also focus on is what's called the singer's formant. And that is this narrow band of pitch. It happens around 2 kilohertz. And it is that space, that harmonic space, that projects over orchestras and also helps us project when we're using microphones or just in general, quite frankly. In the recording studio, you find that 2K band is often what you'll push to get a vocalist to be heard through the mix without adjusting their overall volume. So airflow, vowel formation, engagement, the singer's formant, that 2K band, that bright brilliance in the voice. Okay, for example, and this will be the end of this particular discussion for the moment anyways. If I remove that from my voice, it's in tune, it's okay. If I put it back, all things being equal, that will be brighter and it will project better. And that's just allowing a little bit of mask resonance. So, I am an alto, but sometimes I have problems with the low notes after a passage of fairly high notes. Very, very common to have that happen, Heidi. An excellent question. An excellent, excellent question. Almost certainly I would guess that this has to do with flexibility as we descend. It might also be somewhat dependent on our ability to continue to engage and support as we descend. So, assuming, Heidi, as an alto, that your low notes are falling somewhere around E and D, probably being the absolute bottom of it, if we have been singing high and we're too open, that open space isn't exactly right in terms of the voice resonating in that space. We need to allow it to narrow somewhat. That narrowing of the space and also a little bit of brilliance and brightness in the voice coming forward can help those notes speak more properly for you, that they'll come out and they'll cut through a little bit better. I mentioned staying engaged as we descend. This is a really, really important concept that happens a lot when we start descending lines. You'll notice it, or you may notice it if you're doing this. You'll notice it when you're practicing your vocalizations and the direction changes. So you're maybe going up. And then I start to descend. And I've let all of my engagement and support just go away. We have to keep lifting and engaging, even though we're singing a descending pattern. Try those two things and see if it doesn't help with that somewhat, Heidi. My friends tell me, we're going on to Greg's Life 7, but I have a bit of a southern accent when I sing, though I don't have one when I speak. Interesting. That's very, very interesting. I would ask what kind of music you're singing and what you are listening to. Because if you listen to a lot of country and you're emulating the artists that you listen to, then you may be emulating them in your speaking or in your singing voice. If you're singing country, this isn't entirely a bad thing, by the way. That might be totally fine. If you don't want that affectation, then you may have to invest a little bit of time singing some songs and emulating the vocal delivery of a more neutral enunciation, a more neutral diction. Failing that, then you start getting into the notion of like getting elocution work, things like that. Gregor, that didn't, there we go. That's coming through there. You're very welcome, Heidi. How do you know what your vocal type, baritone, tenor, bass, etc. is? Great question. Hello, yellow hair shanks. Gregor, vocal fosh is, I very frequently punt on this question when it comes up, and it comes up almost, several times a week on the channel. And the fact of the matter is that it is part where the zona de passaggio, secondo passaggio, those points of transition are. Ultimate range has a small amount to do with this, but I think in general gets overplayed. But the quality of one's voice in the various ranges and registers has a lot to do with how we determine vocal fosh. And that's fosh, F-A-C-H-E, is how we refer to vocal ranges in the singing world. So if you were to type that into a Google browser to read up more on it, that's what you would want to look up, vocal ranges, vocal fosh. Specifically though, like, how would you know if you were a tenor? Okay, I'm a tenor. And the first thing that we look at is, well, where's the zona de passaggio? Where's the primo passaggio? Where's the secondo passaggio? And in order to do that, you have to develop your voice with neutral vowels in the thyroarytenoid dominant range first. So all the stuff down here, all neutral, all very similar sounding as I move through that range. We ascend. I know that I have to start modifying things a little bit when I get to about D natural, E flat above middle C. A new vocalist won't necessarily know that, but I know, Gregor, you've been singing for a long time. So you have to take notice of where that initial change in delivery needs to occur. Not a major shift. Airflow begins to become more important. A small amount of vowel modification becomes important. And we keep ascending as we get better. Now I'm still balancing. I'm playing a balancing game on those Fs and F sharps. I'm not fully crossed over into my upper register, but neither am I entirely in my thyroarytenoid dominant range. I'm on the teeter-totter, and it's kind of balancing, right? And then I finally get to G natural. And I can start to feel it lifting off. And as I get into G sharp and A natural, I know that I'm up above the secondo passaggio. Now, that's one aspect of determining vocal fosh. We also have to look at the low register too. Around B natural, I start to feel a bit uncomfortable. Here, I'm really having to allow a lot of air to flow over the vocal fold because it's just the only way I can reliably get the pitch. If I press too hard into it, I can feel how it's going to crack. And those things help us determine what our fosh is going to be. So that is pretty much how we look at it. And it usually takes some time when I start working with a new client. It can take me quite a bit of time before I feel comfortable starting to weigh in on their vocal fosh. I already said hello. How can I relax when asked to sing solo? That is a really good question, John. I get nervous. Music director asked me to sing solo. Happy to have you here, Crazy King 713. Welcome. So relaxation on stage, I think, is a very highly personal thing. For me, I rely very much on feeling the lift through my abdominal area. So when I'm well expanded and lifting very firmly into it, when I get nervous, I have to focus down. And this has the dual advantage of not only helping me feel grounded, but also because I'm so focused on my engagement and airflow, if my voice is fluttering, it stops fluttering for me and it gets a bit more concrete and more solid. So I put my attention downwards. That is in addition to all of the own personal reflections that I've done over the years. My performance anxiety has run the gamut from being really pretty good to being really horrible. Nowadays, my performance anxiety generally manifests itself as when I'm getting ready to perform, that I have an overwhelming sense of dread. I just feel the weight of the world and a sense of dread upon my shoulders. But I also know that after I've been on stage for a song or two, that I'll be okay, that I will start to feel better. It's getting past that first song. And the thing, John, is that if you're, I don't know how many songs you're getting to sing, how many the music directors are asking you to do, but if it's only one, you're kind of getting dropped into the worst part of it and not given the opportunity to go past it. What could be helpful is if there's some local open mics or some other performance opportunities that you could do that would allow you a song or two to try out some different methods to getting comfortable on stage. So you notice the discomfort, try rooting downwards, try being focused on the engagement. See what happens when you get to the second or third tune. If you're still feeling really awful, then try another thought as you go into the next time you do it. So another thing that I've often done is looked right above the heads of the audience and anchoring on something at the back of the room. So you can tell if I look directly at the camera here and I look only an inch or two above it, there's very little difference in the way that my eyes appear to you. And your audience will most likely experience it in a very similar capacity. As you get more comfortable, then you can risk making eye contact with your audience, looking down and making that engagement. The thing is, though, is I really do think that there's a lot that goes into this which is highly personal and very unique to the individual, and so it may require some exploration and some experimentation on your part. You flip somewhere around G is definitely, if you're definitely over into your upper register at that point, tenor range, but again, this is not something that one can say definitively without working with someone for a while. I can give you the ideas, but you'd have to explore your voice quite a bit, and it would also depend on how much vocal fold engagement, Gregor, you're carrying up to that G. Martina. Mixed voice. Should I let it happen or rethink my approach? Voice seems so fragile and unbalanced. It is a balancing act getting into the zona di passaggio. The question is, if it's fragile, you may be on the very sort of back, you may be on the lower amount of airflow it's required to successfully get you into the mixed voice. For example, that mixing area of my voices starts to happen around E flat, E natural above middle C, okay? So if I start to ascend towards that with insufficient airflow, then one of two things will happen. I'll either squeeze in order to try to squeeze the note out, but that doesn't set me up to go any higher very well. In fact, it makes it much more difficult for me to cross the zona di passaggio and get in my upper register. Now, if I'm too light, then I will tend towards falsetto. Very airy. Okay? What I have to learn to do is to have just enough airflow and just enough vocal fold engagement. And that makes it better for me to ascend. And then I can start crossing over. But Martina, the way that we start this, if you're new to using your mixed voice, or you just haven't had a lot of experience with it or had someone talk to you about it, start with descending scale patterns and allow it to be very dopey sounding, all right? So again, my transition point's around F, F sharp, right? So I'm going to start with a note that is definitively above that point, and I'm going to skip over it. So I'll do C major here. You. Notice how open and dopey sounding that note on the top is. You. And then it gets very narrow as I descend below the zona di passaggio. What I am doing is I am emphasizing the change between cricothyroid dominant or mixed voice singing and thyroarytenoid dominant chest voice singing. As I get more coordinated and my airflow gets more secure, then I can start to make the timbres match a little bit more closely. You. And eventually getting into other vowels. We. When that gets more secure, I can start to ascend and descend. So start with some descending patterns, even the lip trill. You can still hear how dopey it is. It's an vowel that's back there. And then it gets very narrow as I descend below my zona di passaggio, my secondo passaggio. That's how I would recommend you start with that. And then C, and again, this is like gross motor skill coordination. We're just learning how to make this shift from upper register mixed voice area into thyroarytenoid dominant singing chest voice register. And as that gets better, then start to do some ascending patterns and then start to do some scalar patterns. You're very welcome, Gregor. It's a pleasure. I'm glad it's helping. That's a very good question, Heidi. One of the things, and I don't know why I didn't say it earlier with the question about nervousness and performance anxiety, but in some book, some many, many years ago, I read, or I may have made this up myself. It's been too long for me to know any longer. But what I said is fear is the energy to do well in a foreign situation. And that works really well for me too. Standing on stage in front of a room full of people, it is no longer a foreign situation for me, but I still get nervous. And that fear, that nervousness and energy, I try to rechannel into energy to perform, to focus my mind and really, really bring my A game to the performance. The Mobe, 6 songs. Give advice on not letting my voice weaken on the 5th or 6th song. That's an awesome question. There's a couple things that immediately come to mind. One, pace yourself. Have really, really good dynamics, because dynamics are going to help you pace yourself as well. So, for example, if much of what you're singing is here, we want to have a well-produced, good sound, yet if we push too hard or work too hard, we are going to tire ourselves out unnecessarily. We need a lot more energy as we get into the zona de passaggio. It takes a lot of energy for those big muscles through the core of the body to stay engaged and keep air moving over the vocal folds so it can stay released. That's the most important aspect about that. When you say voice weaken, I wonder about your engagement and how much airflow you're maintaining throughout the registers of your voice. But again, pace yourself and use dynamics as a means by which to pace yourself so that when you're here, as I ascend, there's a little crescendo. But not as much as when I ascend up an octave. It's all quite relative. I would also advise you to consider your pregame regimen. And I know this is somewhat cliche to say, but remain well hydrated, not just the hours before your performance, but in the day prior to your performance. Consider your intake of caffeine, which can dehydrate you ever so slightly. Though I myself drink coffee, if you could forego it without hurting yourself, if you drink coffee or teas and things like that on a daily basis, you may be worse off to not have it that morning. So treat that one, cautiously. But if you're a casual coffee drinker, maybe forego it before your exam. Certainly forego it in the hours prior, the hour and a half prior to the performance. For myself personally, I find that if I have a lot of a very heavy meal in too close a proximity, and for me that's 2 hours, for you it may be different, I don't want to have that kind of weight in my body. Additionally, that's going to take up a lot of energy as your body processes the food. So very, very light meals. I know that when I come off of a gig, I'm going to be ravenously hungry no matter what time of day or night it is. So consider what you're eating. Those are the main things. Obviously good rest, although I wouldn't count on good rest. Think about good rest not the night before, but 2 nights before, because exams, you have to assume that you're probably going to sleep poorly that night. I mean, it's game day. So that's not the night in question. 2 nights prior is when we want to focus on beginning this process of ramping up for the exam. This may seem like a rather protracted experience, but I take performance and these kinds of things really, really seriously. And if it's that important, then it's worth preparing 36 or 48 hours in advance for. I mean, obviously you're practicing now for this, I would assume, or, well, I don't know when exactly it is, but you're going to practice in the weeks prior to this exam. It's not a big deal to start your performance pattern a couple days in advance. As you get more accustomed to singing 5 or 6 songs, I doubt that will become an issue for you all the time. Tenor singer. Find that all the engagement, energy, focus also brings tension, John. Second tenor in a male voice choir. Tension where, John? Sorry to have to ask that question, but if it's tension in the throat, then there's an imbalance happening. Oh, I see what you're saying. The energy and focus as you're doing the performance brings tension, if that's what you mean by that. Yeah. Again, and for me, that's why I'm so focused down, because this is what's going to ultimately release that tension. If you're gripping, and you're habitually gripping, and you'll know that, like if you're hearing a lot of glottal attacks on your vowels, A, E, those sorts of things, then there's some even more additional habitual grip that's happening in the throat. And that's going to require a little bit of practice. The quick fix on that is an H. He, hey. You can't do that as obviously when you're performing. It's not going to help. Well, it'll help, but it's obviously adding something to the tune, which we don't want. That's a practice thing. So yeah, let me know. Chime back in with where that tension is occurring for you. How can I improve how I sing without taking lessons? This is BG Jimmy. Well, lessons are the best way to improve, in my opinion, whether you're taking them with someone online or taking them in person. If you cannot do that, however, there are some things that you can do. One, certainly interacting like this, to get tips and things like that. There's so many resources. I personally have hundreds of videos online, which are free. You can go and check that out. I have a free online sequential teaching system on my website, jeffrolka.com. You can check that out too. However, recording yourself will reveal what you are doing. Do not trust your ear to evaluate your singing voice while you are practicing. So do some warm-ups, record some warm-ups, do a song, record the song. And I'm not talking about like a studio recording. I'm talking about grab, whatever you've got. I would imagine that there are online recording sources that are free to use. So you pull up a website, record 30 seconds or a minute of a tune, or 30 seconds or 60 seconds of vocalizations. Evaluate it after. If you can wait a day to evaluate that, that would be even better. And try to listen honestly, and assess where things are not matching up. So for example, let's say you're doing one of my videos, right? And there's a bunch of them where you're running through a bunch of vowels sequentially. And let's say you do it and it sounds like this. Ah and O just disappear into an airiness. Those vowels do not sound the same as the E and the A. Why? There's information out there. Listen to the recording, evaluate the recording, go and find the resources, but you have to develop a critical ear for what's right and what's wrong. If you're trying to sing higher notes and it hurts, first of all, stop. It shouldn't hurt. I am not of the opinion that singing should hurt, okay? So stop. Do a search. Find out what's going on. You may have to do some trial and error. Ultimately, I think that you can learn a lot on your own. However, there's going to be a lot more trial and error. You may follow down some blind alleys. That is entirely possible to do. But there is tons and tons of information out there that is available to you. But the most important thing is you're going to have to record yourself and evaluate it, because you can't do it in real time. At least not in the beginning. Later on you will. Martina, you are very welcome. Sing tenor, that was part of the other question. The Mober. Yes, I feel like I do maybe give too much at the start and I forget about the last songs, but I was also wondering, is a longer warm-up better or worse for me if I'm singing a lot of songs? Really, really good question. In general, if you are going into your upper register, I would say yes. A little bit longer warm-up is going to be better. That is the caveat there is how efficient you are at warming up. If you are super, super efficient, then it may not make any difference. But in general, a longer, more gradual warm-up, mainly because we want to make sure that our engagement and support systems are really, really warmed up and really, really moving. If I have to sing really early in the morning, half of my warm-up is just me moving around and loosening up and trying to get my body going so that I can adequately engage and support my voice. BG Jimmy. When I sing, sometimes my friends say to me, you sing in your nose, and I don't know how to avoid that. Very, very good question. So that is referred to as the mask, okay? We call that the mask. Those frequencies, the resonances that occur in the mask are a necessary component of our singing voices, okay? So anyone that tells you you've got to remove all of that resonance, that's not the entire picture. If I did that, I would not sound natural. I don't want to hear myself sing that way. I don't think anybody else wants to hear me sing that way, okay? So the nose has to be open. How much air we direct into it is going to dictate how much of that mask resonance we have. So if I go for like a normal vocal delivery, if I'm singing with a really loud band, or I know I have to project, I'm going to go a little further. That's going to give me a bit more projection. When we go too far, we've lost the connection to here. And again, that's not useful to us. We don't want that sound. So here's the thing. There's a couple things that you can do. One, pinch your nose shut. And see if you can feel your fingertips like buzzing along with your nose. If you feel the vibrations, think about directing the airflow backwards. It'll feel like you're talking like this. It's going to feel a bit kind of open and weird at first. All right? When you can achieve that and you can maintain that without feeling your fingers buzzing for a little while, then start to open and close. There shouldn't be, at least here, I don't know if the microphone is capturing it adequately, but there's little to no change in the timbre of my voice. If you do that and it sounds like this, and you should be able to hear a volume and a resonance change there, there is too much airflow going forward into the mask. So start again, bring it back, and get that release so that there's little to no change. Now the other exercise that's really, really excellent for learning to direct airflow around the nasal pharynx, and that is where we're talking about airflow. We're talking about manipulating how airflow moves around the nasal pharynx, is one that I call the hung exercise. When you say that, hung, that NG closes off the mouth with the tongue, and we can learn to direct our airflow in different ways. Now again, I don't know if the mic is going to pick this up very adequately, but if we go forward with it, we get that really buzzy sound. That's great for learning how to put point or resonance and projection on our voices. For you, however, you want to direct it back. Keeping in mind, though, all the air is coming out my nose, but I can still adjust the resonance by directing the airflow back and bringing it forward, right? Direct it back. Then you can learn how to balance it so you have just the right amount of resonance that you find desirable. But too much is not great. None is not going to work either. We have to find a balancing point with sinus resonance, nasal pharynx resonance. Yes, okay, good. So then we did talk about that. Tension in the throat, shoulders, jaw. If you've got throat tension, you're either gripping out of habit or there isn't enough engagement in subglottic, below the epiglottis, subglottic airflow to allow the vocal fold to adequately release. And that you're going to have to do some engagement and airflow exercises. Lip trill can help with that. Shoulders, in your practice in vocalizations, roll your shoulders. You might be able to get away with a little bit of shoulder roll on stage or some movement. But really, if you just move a little bit, you can become aware of that tension and you can release it to a certain extent. Jaw, similar. Actually, that's going to come out next week. I just did a video on I think I called it the 3 key practices to release jaw and tongue tension. So John, next, depending on what time zone you're in, you'll either see that on Friday evening or Saturday morning. And there's a couple tips in there, but for jaw, there's 2 main things I would have you check out. You practice this in your vocalizations. One is to insert your fingers through your cheeks, not literally through your cheeks, right? But just push the flesh in so you can't close your mouth, and sing your scales that way. This will not only help you get your vowels focused more towards the rear, but it'll also keep your jaw isolated out. It'll lock it out of the equation of moving up and down. And in the video, I also talk about doing this with your scales. So as you ascend, pushing down, not really pushing, but allowing it to drop down. And allowing it to close as you descend. Learning to move your jaw along with your exercises will help you to stay loose when you are singing in performance. You might start off wherever you are in your vocal study. You might check out I'm not sure if it's in the beginners channel, but I did a video called Slow to Fast. And just the slow scales would give you more time to let the jaw come down and then let it come back up. And you might try some of the beginner videos as well, just because of the tempo, not because you're a beginning singer, but the tempo will give you more time to release that jaw down and let it come back up. Again, it's not pushing. We're not pushing it down. We want to release it down and then come back up. Release down and come back up. Martina, is free-flowing vibrato a sign that I'm singing correctly? 99% of the time I feel like I'm more relaxed when my voice goes in vibrato. Yes. The short answer to that is yes. Vibrato is a naturally occurring consonance of a well-aligned system. To briefly unpack that, when you have good airflow and good engagement and the vocal mechanism and the tissues around it are allowed to release, then there's this interplay between them where they kind of oscillate ever so slightly, and that becomes vibrato. You're very, very welcome, BG Jimmy. I'm happy to help. I assure you that I'm going to continue what I'm doing. Thank you for chiming in with that. That means a lot. Rid of shakiness of the voice. Only happens to me when I've been singing for a very long time. All over your range, sorry to have to throw that back at you, but all over the range or in one specific area? And how long are we talking about here? Like, are we talking like, because I've been in cover bands where I had to sing for, 3 hours, 45 minutes with 10 or 15 minutes off. I guess that's really like 3 45-minute sets, so it's not entirely 3 hours. But for really long periods of time, when is this occurring? What range? Whereabouts? Prosody music. I'm a male singer, Irish, and I get a lot of tension and muscle pain in the area of my neck, around and above the edges of my hyoid bone when I sing. are you belting, or are you trying to transition into your upper register, or do you do a combination of both, prosody music? If you are belting, then how, if you are aware of where your secondo passaggio is, what proximity to it are you in? So, like I know that I get into the zona de passaggio, like, you know, E natural, above middle C, that sort of area, and I know that I'm above it when I get to about G sharp. So I know that if I want to belt something, I am not going to exceed a G or G sharp, because that's about as high as I think it's comfortable to do that kind of technique with. So if you're going up above that too much, then you're really, really inducing a lot of tension on the thyroarytenoid dominant aspect of your singing voice, and it doesn't surprise me that you get a lot of tension. So yeah, let me know what's going on there. You're very welcome, John. Thank you very much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Martina. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for using the videos. I'm just very, very glad that they're helping. It seems, I want to hear from Prosody Music here about the range that they're in. He is in. It does occur to me, I'm curious too about your, indeed, Heidi, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It's possible too, if you are transitioning, if you're allowing yourself to go into the upper register of your voice, I'd be curious to know how long you've been comfortable with that technique, or if you've been doing it for a long time. When I just began to make successful transitions, and really, really began to work the technique of transitioning through the zona de passaggio, so not belting, there was a period of time where I experienced a little bit of sort of musculature soreness on the sides and around the area of my neck. But it wasn't pain. It was just a little bit of like very, very gentle fatigue. And I don't get the impression that's what you're talking about. Please forgive me if I do not pronounce your name properly. J-H-A-Y-J or Jay. I'm about to wrap things up, but if you got a quick question, please send it in, type it in, and I will make sure that I get to it. And I want to answer this one for the Mober. It happens when I've sang a lot of songs. I feel like my voice does not be sore, no tension. It feels like it's in shock, so it starts to shake. And at that point, I can only sing very low. That is very interesting. It's not sore, and it's not tense. I'm wondering if you are doing something similar to what Heidi was doing when it comes to being in a high register and then transitioning into the lower part of the voices. We have to narrow as we descend. So if I'm singing something here, and then I know I have to go all the way back down there, I have to narrow those vowels, and I also have to keep engaging and lifting. So there's two main things here. I'm very open, I got a lot of air moving, and I'm very much engaged. If I release too much engagement too soon, it all deflates around me. I have to lift and sing down to those lower pitches, but also narrow as I get into my lower register of my voice. If I don't do both of those things, well, then almost anything can happen. Shakiness, absolutely. Let me know if that sounds familiar. Prosody, thank you for getting back in touch. I've noticed it a lot in my zona de passaggio. Yeah, have a muscular imbalance of some sort as my falsetto seems to have diminished somewhat. Yeah, I'm going to scroll back and read again what you wrote there. Neck. That sounds quite likely to me. That sounds very, very likely to me. I wonder too about flexibility, but again, inflexibility in the voice often occurs a lot when we don't have adequate airflow and engagement to allow things to change shape. So similar to the question that I just talked about with the Mober here, if I'm here, I really have to keep lifting and also allow things to narrow as I descend. Both of those things occur, otherwise I get funny things. If I don't allow it to narrow, pardon me, then I get an unpredictable result with my voice. Yeah, I would really, if I might recommend, there's a video that I did, which it's a warm up, and it's this is like diaphragmatic. It's like focused on diaphragmatic breathing. And what I do is I weave a lot of airflow engagement and muscle engagement exercises into, or in the spaces in between the vocalizations. I would be curious, and my plan is to do office hours every week at the same time. So I would be curious to have you try that and then chime back in either in the comments or here next week. Sorry. To see if that still occurs for you. The Mober, is it growing yet? 17. Definitely. Tips today, Jeff. Yes. Yeah, well, I just mentioned that a moment ago, that I do intend to do these every week. So I will be here next week, same bat time, same bat channel. Actually, no, I guess the link will change. So there will be a different link. Used to sing since elementary till high school and stopped for 3 years. Hitting the high notes during vocalization but can't when I sing. The last note. Tenor in high school. Well, yeah, our voices do change, and when they go through that change, it takes a little while to settle down, as the Mober is perhaps experiencing a little bit. There is almost always a discrepancy until you've been vocalizing and getting comfortable in your upper register for quite some period of time. There can be a discrepancy between what you are capable of vocalizing and what you can successfully incorporate into a song. One of the ways that you can try to bring those two things together is obviously, one, maintain a really good practice. So if you know that you are busy on any given day and you only have 15 minutes, and this may seem very unhip, but whatever, practice your scales. If that's all you got, that's all you're going to get that day. There's no singing of any other kind. There's no opportunities of any other kind. Make that 10 or 15 minutes scale vocalization practice. That is a more efficient, long-term use of your time than singing a few songs. Much as I love to sing songs, much as we all love to sing songs. I mean, I don't think any of you that are chiming in here got started singing because you wanted to sing your scales so much. I happen to enjoy singing my scales, but I'd much rather be singing a song. But I know that the scales and the vocalization practice is going to keep me sharp so that I can sing the songs I want to sing in the way that I want to sing them. Now that's one thing to consider. The other thing to consider too is how you approach singing your songs. It is not always Okay, so you don't just have to vocalize on scales. You could also vocalize within the context of your songs. So let's say I'm trying to think of a melody here that I can remember. Okay, somewhere over the rainbow, right? Let's say I've got to practice that for some reason, okay? I can make that into a vocalization. This can help you bridge the gap between what you can vocalize and what you can perform, right? You take the vocalizations and you use them in the repertoire, right? And that bridges that gap. It also makes it a bit more interesting too than just doing vocalizations. You are very welcome, Prosody Music. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Anthony Frizzell, I don't know that, I'm afraid. I don't know the exercises that they recommend. But if you're asking of the direction of travel with the patterns and things like that, if what Mr. Frizzell is recommending is that you start in descending patterns, then I am entirely on board. When we're just beginning to learn how to utilize our head voices, and especially to transition out of that upper register of our voices, it is typically easier to start with descending exercises because often that direction of travel with the voice doesn't have the habits that we've developed over the years of singing up to that area of our voice. So, for example, and I went over this a little bit earlier today, but you. Notice the top one's really open, and then the bottom two notes of the arpeggio are much narrower. You. Okay? That is just gross motor coordination. I'm just learning how to go from upper register into the thyroarytenoid dominant. So cricothyroid dominant is upper register, thyroarytenoid dominant is the chest voice. And we start that way so that we can start to learn the coordination of how we're going to make that transition, and then we can start remembering it and then ascending, and then we narrow the intervals. So really the first pattern that you would do for this would be an octave arpeggio, because you have a lot of space between those notes. You. Again, you. If that's problematic, we. The E vowel is easier to narrow below the zona de passaggio, and that can make it easier to start getting that going. You're very welcome, Jay. That's very kind of you. Thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm really glad that you're singing again. I hope the channel helps, and I hope that Q&As like this can help too. I haven't seen it yet. I only, for as much as I do online, I only just heard the other day that they had gotten back together and were doing some reunion shows, and I think I believe they're touring anyways. But I haven't listened to any of it yet. I don't know. Absolutely, the Mober. I will absolutely be doing more tenor videos. There's, in fact, I just added the mezzo-soprano range to the videos. So now, instead of doing the four warm-up videos, usually about once a week or every other week, I'm trying to intersperse warm-up videos with technical things and exercises that you can apply to the warm-up videos to just increase your overall experience with them. I'll end up doing the 5. And FYI, as tenors, You can always use of a sequence of videos, like like the ones that just went out today. It's like a full range vocal warm-up that I did. If you have a part that is particularly high, so like let's say you're a tenor and you've got to go really, really high, like let's say you're doing the role of Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar, right? That goes up to a C natural, high C, way up there, right? It is generally recommended that we vocalize a major second to a minor third above the highest note that we are required to perform. So if I have to sing a high C, then I'm going to warm up to a D or an E flat. And you can always move between the different vocal ranges. The exercises, I purposely make them the same so that we can do these kinds of things. If you've got a role that's particularly high, you're working on Bohemian Rhapsody, right? The tenor video is going to get you warmed up really well, and you might still have to use that for starters. But then switch over to the mezzo-soprano or alto in order to get just those extra few notes on the top end of the scales. You're very welcome. Excellent, Heidi. That's awesome. Yeah, had a request, and after I gave it some thought, it just made sense to start doing those and to start getting them out there. So they are going to continue, and I've just been having a lot of fun with them anyway, so it's been really, really good. And it seems like we are coming to an end. I wasn't sure how much time to budget for this week. Last week we went for, I think, 40 minutes or something like that. And I had only meant to do a half hour. This week I was planning on a half hour to 45, and I believe we've been online for an hour. Japadog, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I'm assuming it's Japadoji or Japadoji or something like that. I'm going to do these every week. That is the plan. Inevitably, there's going to be some weeks where I'm going to miss, but whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world, 6 p.m. GMT on, well, it's Saturday here. I don't know what, I guess it's going to be Saturday probably just everywhere around the world, unless you're in Australia or something. But 6 p.m. GMT on Saturdays is when I am planning on doing these, and I plan on doing them every week. So if you don't get a chance to answer your question, or I don't get a chance to answer your question on any given week, then we can always try next week, and I will be sure to do it then. Or if you miss a week, then you can come in the next week or something like that. Excellent, Jay. Tenor fully rough, and then both make the songs I sing very enjoy. You're very welcome. You're very, very welcome. All right, everybody, I'm going to call it good. Thank you very, very much for watching. It was really a pleasure. Thanks for the questions. Really, really awesome questions. And I hope that you'll join me next week. If you're not yet a subscriber, I guess I got to do this, right? If you're not yet a subscriber, please do consider subscribing. And yeah, I look forward to doing many, many more of these. Nick. Oh, okay. Oh, your nickname is not even a word, just a few letters. That's cool. All right. Have a good day, everybody. I will see you next week. Thank you again for watching and all that kind of good stuff. You're very, very welcome, everybody. You're very, very welcome. Cheers. Bye.